And we're live. All right.
We're live.
We're live.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, so the first thing I want to hear from you is your spicy take on Codex and how
Oh
how
yeah,
poor
okay.
it's been for you.
I mean, it's. I think I haven't quite gathered my thoughts on it yet. So I hadn't used Codex a whole lot because I've been burning the Claude Max subscription for a while. And last weekend I used up all of the Max plan, like the weekly limit, in
Mhm.
about 2 days. So then I didn't have too many other options and um, booted up Codex. Codex actually had like really good was it like usage limits for what you get. I think I just have the $20 or whatever a month plan, but
Okay.
can pipe a lot of tokens through that, and it works pretty well. But I mean, I was using that then for Monday through Wednesday of this week until my Claude subscription reset, and did a lot of stuff. It worked away and made many, many thousands of lines of code. I tried before letting it run on things. I spent quite a while having it go through all of the like Claude MD files I have and the different skills and things like that that all are like I've been tuned a lot to get Claude
Mm.
to really like do the things that I want in the way that I want it to do them. And I found that that's giving me like exactly the output I want all the time with Claude. I get,
Wait. So you,
like
you had Claude go through and update like your Claude MD files and like your,
I oh sorry.
or did you go
I
through it
had I
manually?
had Codex this week, so before I would let
I see.
Codex kind of unleash itself here, I wanted to
Got
bring
it.
in some of those like
That makes
requirements
sense.
around workflows and code quality and things like that. That like I have really heavy emphasis on minimal change sets, so don't write 2,000 lines of code if you can get away with 100 or
Right.
whatever the there's no hard metrics on it. It's a lot of it's contextual. That some things have inherent complexity, and it's going to be 3,000 lines of code, and that's totally fine. But
Yeah.
other things really don't need to be. And if you've written that much code, it's you've done something wrong. And I've got Claude really dialed in with that concept, and so it's really good at it can work away for 4 hours, and the total outcome of that is a 200 line diff, and it's
Mm.
perfect. It does exactly what it needs to do, and that was a good use of tokens because it solved some problem. Codex does not seem to play nicely with that idea, though. It will just kind of go off and do whatever it needs to do to solve the task, and its judgment is maybe not where I need it to be for that. And so there was a lot of code that it wrote that it really didn't need to write, and it started writing extra abstractions and tools and different things to be able
Oh,
to like solve
weird.
what the task that I give it, and then it worked. The solutions it gave worked, but they were really not what I wanted.
Yeah, because it
And so
just
then
added a bunch of extra stuff that it didn't need to add to try to do the task. Do you think that that's because it's trying to, like, it doesn't think to look for stuff that exists, or it doesn't have a proper understanding before
a
doing
lot
it?
of it was within its own code. It wrote four different variations of some identical 30-line function that it just copy pasted across a bunch of different files instead
Oh,
of putting it somewhere central and importing it in everywhere.
interesting.
It just duplicated everywhere, and that seemed really weird to me. I wouldn't think that
Yeah.
it should do something like that, but there was a lot of examples of it. So once my Claude
Mm.
subscription reset yesterday, I used it to do code review over these many thousands of lines of code that it wrote, and ended up throwing out 75-80% of it probably. Just had Claude Go like kind of backport the useful stuff and then rewrite the implementations of the other pieces from scratch, and then the total diffs on those were exactly what I needed, and they were
Okay.
minuscule, and like
Yeah.
the tasks were not all that complicated, didn't require that much code, and I feel like if I just let Codex run for a long time, it would create this huge mountains of tech debt. And
And you
I
didn't.
kind of got the impression, sorry, that it was like they have compaction built in a weird way that maybe I'm not used to or something. Where like
Oh, maybe.
Claude knows everything in the
Maybe.
session until it compacts, and then it's useless. But Codex kind of continuously reclaims context space. I have no idea how it does that or like what the mechanism looks like, but it'll be working away, and you have a little percentage bar in the corner there that says, you've got
Oh,
49% of your context is remaining, and then all of a sudden that'll bump up and you have 60% free, and then it'll work away a little bit more, and then you have
okay.
70% free, and then it'll, and so it's doing something in the background there where it's kind of
Yeah,
doing that. And I feel like probably the details around how I needed to do the
yeah.
work is getting lost in that process somehow, but I don't know how to play with that, or like what to do with it.
And you
um
use the highest, like you use the highest thinking, highest it was like a Codex High or something like that.
yeah, they have effort levels, reasoning levels, something
It's the
like that.
highest level.
So
Like you can
Codex,
actually determine the model as like, I think Codex High or something like that.
yeah, well, they've got extra high as well
That's it.
now,
Yeah.
and possibly one above that. I don't remember. I
Ultra
was playing with the
High.
top two ones basically. They have
Okay.
they have some like ultra maximum thinking mode, and then
Yeah.
one that's a little bit less than that. And I did kind of play between the two of those a bit, but didn't go down to the low or medium thinking options because I figure I'd want it to do the thinking.
Okay.
Um,
I think Max is their
yeah,
top one.
sure. Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
so do you think? Okay, so it seems to be compacting the context window automatically as you go, versus Claude does not. Now, the question is, were you doing this for like? Were you just trying to do like more heavily monitored runs, like where you were just kind of saying do this task and then it should finish and you work within that session, or were you running like a Ralph loop where it was like focus on one individual thing, use ticket to track the tickets and carry on?
I did have Ticket as its task management tool. I did like add that to its
Yeah.
requirements. Is don't use whatever your internal to-do list is, if it
Okay.
has one. I'm not even sure. Just said, here's this Ticket CLI. Use that for managing all of your tasks. And then I did kind of just a manual, um, not definitely not a full autonomous Ralph loop situation. Just okay, let's go look at the code base and let's look at these
Okay.
new requirements and things and plan out the work. Go generate a bunch of tickets, and then I killed that session, started a new one, and said, okay, we're going to begin. Here's the set of tasks that we have. Go explore, build up your context, whatever you need to do, and we can start working through these. And then it would do some work, and it would make some commits, and then I'd kill that session and bring up a new one and
Hmm.
carry on. And that workflow also generally works really good with Claude. I've never had, like, don't have to go full autonomy. I know that I can let Claude do that and I will get the output that I want from it at this point, but I also do like just kind of letting it go. But so I had Codex running and I could watch everything that it's doing. And in the moment, everything kind of makes sense. But then when you go back and look at the end result of the session, it doesn't necessarily.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, because you're
and
not
it
reviewing
did.
each individual change log. This is what I typically do is like I would review the output, what it said it did, and then I'll usually just prompt it again with like, please make sure that you've done everything. Check that you've done everything as it was what the words I use, accurately and completely, and then verify it using like a test or verify it using like prove that you've done it. That's the usual, and so you did something like that. That was kind of the approach that you took with Codex.
Yeah, just like let it work for a while. I don't like let it run in the YOLO mode,
Yeah.
and not approving every individual diff that it's
Right.
making. But then it gives a summary at the end of its work that
Yeah.
says I completed XYZ, and so then I would look at that, and sometimes that seems completely fine, and I would look at the code then and go, oh, this is still maybe not what I want. Like it's
Oh, so did the
like
summary seem
this
like it wasn't complete, or did
no, the summary, is saying that it did all of the things that I asked, and technically, in a way, it did, but it's not in
okay?
the way that I would want it to be done, and is maybe a little bit hyper fixated on certain details of the problem, and so it,
Mm,
like in isolation, yes, this is probably fine, but in the wider grand picture of where we want to go with the project, it's really not,
hmm.
and this does solve what needed to be solved, but it's not something that I want to carry forward. Um, and I found that like with the older codex models as well. I think GPT 5.3 codex is better on kind of getting intent behind what you're after, whereas the older ones were very literal, you said X, it's going to go do X, and it will
Yeah.
boil all of the oceans on the planet to achieve X.
Right.
And that's great, but you had a subtle nuance around X that you didn't articulate, and it didn't discover that nuance when it was exploring the code or anything. And so it would just, and now the output is not great. 5.3 seems better on that front. The thing that would, like, 5.2 really annoyed me was it would go make a bunch of changes and it would write tests and stuff, and then it would say, I've completed all of this, it's probably a good idea to go run the test, would you like me to go run the tests?
Oh yeah.
And obviously, like, there is never a situation where I would say, no, don't run the tests. Just do it. 5.3 is happy to go run the test continuously as it's working, and I thought that was, great. 5.2, if I wanted to run the test, that has to be part of the instructions. I say, as you're working, make regular commits, run the test suite regularly, run the linters. If you don't say linters, it's not going to run linters, and those kind of things. Whereas 5.3 is better around that. It knows that these tools exist in the project, so it will incorporate that into its process kind of on its own. But I've never had to say any of that with Claude. It just knows that running tests is a good idea, and so it would just go reach for that on its own. And same with a lot of the other things around the work. It's just better at getting the intent of what I'm trying to do rather than the literal words of what I've told it to do.
So I guess for now, Codex 5.3 just doesn't work with the systems that you haven't, or it doesn't seem to like the problem seemed to be one, that it seems to compact the context window regularly, which is more of a convenience thing. Like it's an attempt at convenience, but as a result, it loses some critical context that you needed to keep, which might relate to the second point I was about to make, which is that it looks like it doesn't necessarily follow your, like, I don't know if you're using the agents.md spec or whatever you've converted your Claude MD to agentsmd, whatever kind of specs you're using to like instructions you're giving it, it doesn't hold on to those long enough, probably because of that context compaction that it does throughout the session.
Yeah, that would be my suspicion anyway. That's the big reason why I don't like Claude Compact ever. I have auto compaction disabled there. Occasionally I will do a manual one if I think that there might be some value in that. But usually compaction means all of my core instructions get thrown out. And so I don't ever let that happen with Claude. And so then I would kind of think that, okay, it's not like, spend a good amount of time setting up equivalent agents MD files that have all of the core things about how I wanted to do the work. And it would seem like it's following those off the start. And so then I would kind of get less hands-on, more complacent, something. I would kind of work on some other things while it's working away on the thing that I let it do. And then I would come back and it's really not following those words at all anymore. And I have to think that it's just lost that during some background compaction thing. If that's happening, I really don't know the internals of this thing.
Yeah, that's odd. I wish, like, because obviously you and I have both heard other people sing the praises of Codex. Take it all with a grain of salt, but I wonder. I'd be curious what the difference is in their workflow. Like, I think there has to be a difference in workflow that works better for Codex. We just haven't spent enough time with it to know what that is.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest thing is I've spent just a silly amount of time working with Claude at this point, and I know exactly how it's going to solve certain problems or tasks or how it's going to go tackle those. And then I've wired up all of this stuff around it to patch over the shortcomings that it's had over the months that I've been working with it. And I haven't spent the equivalent time with Codex to figure out where its blind spots are, or the parts where I would want to shore up the instructions or something. So I think that's a key bit of it. But also I think, and we've kind of talked about this a while back, like I think there's a mental modeling difference of just the way that people think, that the GPT family models really jives with the way that some people think internally and the way that they communicate then. And that works really well with that family of models. And then there's other people, and that I'm probably in that camp, that the way that I think and the way that I approach problems just fits better with the way that Claude approaches problems and communicates things. And if you're in on either side of that, like that's just kind of how your brain is wired. And I
Mm.
wonder if that's just how it, you know, you end up on one side or the other then, because they're very different model families. They behave very differently. They focus on different things, and I think that that translates to the people that are working with them as well.
I think it has a lot to do. If I had to guess, I would guess that it would have a lot to do with the reinforcement learning that's being done. Like when they're training these models, when they're doing the reinforcement. Like I can't remember. It was I was watching some video, a couple videos about Claude and using it and the process they keep using it. And there's this one person who I think she's like spent the most time with Claude, and so her whole job is like training Claude about ethics and AI and like getting feedback. And obviously Anthropic is very big about ethics and safety, and so they have people dedicated to specifically just working with Claude and understanding the model and then using that to reinforce other behaviors that they want. And I'm sure OpenAI has the same thing, and so they probably just, if I had to guess, obviously the underlying models are different, but that's probably a part of it is how the people that are doing the reinforcement learning on it, the RLHF, are how they're instructing the model versus from one versus the other is has to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything that goes into the model training process has kind of led them into these different directions where they each have different
Yeah.
kind of special focuses, or I don't know what to call it. They're just different, and they're better at different things,
Mm-hmm.
and that's fine and great because people are different too. And
Yeah. There's got to
just
be. I wonder if there's probably like a meme or something out there, a comic, like showing like what the character of each model is. Like giving them some sort of here's the character of this particular model, how you describe it.
yeah, I have seen some of those. I think the one that kind of stuck the most is, I mean, it's from a few months back, but there was, treating Claude as the some sort of high EQ people pleaser person,
Okay.
and the other, and then on the GPT side was, he's a just a tunnel vision autistic savant kind of
Okay.
personality that I, probably dig that up somewhere. But that was kind of, I think I agree on
Mm,
that, of like GPT ones are incredibly good at the thing that you
very
set
directed
them to
tasks.
do, but they are not in. It's just, again, it's just different.
That's got to be somewhat accurate because that's why, like Claude, about the EQ especially, because if you look at like I think I've mentioned this before, Claude 4.6 is at the top of EQ bench for all the categories
Sure.
by quite a big range, and like that says something, right? Like that's a measurement of that specifically. So I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Do you know where GPT sits on that
That's a great question.
board?
I actually want to look that up now. EQ
Yeah.
bench. Let's see. GPT sits. Okay, so interestingly, overall EQ bench, Sonnet 4.6 actually beats Opus 4.6. That's interesting.
Sure.
GPT 5.1 is on position 4, but down quite a bit. Like the score is significantly lower. Like here, if I whatever, I'll have to I'll just reference it in a link. But like basically the well, hold on, I can probably drag this in the window. Let's do a iffy experiment here with recording. So I put it in the recording window. The EQ bench shows Sonnet 4.6. The total score is 1944. Claude Opus 4.6 is 1926. But then the next one below it is GLM5, that's interesting. Is 16 though, so 1672. So there's quite a
Drop
big
there.
difference. And then GPT 5.1 is 1652. But then 5.2 is GPT 5.2 goes to 1619. So like there is quite a big difference between the two of them, or between all four of them rather. If you look at the long form writing one, Sonnet 4.6 and Opus 4.6 are at the top. GPT 5 high reasoning goes down to about position was at 5. So 5, 6, 7 is GPT. So again, they're behind. These ones are a little closer. I like the creative writing, long form writing I really like, and creative writing I really like. Sonnet's at the top, Opus is underneath it. That's really interesting. GPT 5.2 is in
Yeah.
third. So
Yeah.
uh, there you go.
The other
Hopefully.
interesting bit too is like the Dash Codex models OpenAI says are kind of distinctly different variants off of the
Mm,
main one. Like you can in Codex you could pick GPT 5.2 or GPT 5.2 dash Codex.
mm,
That's the kind of coding oriented flavor of it, and that's not on these boards here. And I kind of wonder if that would actually score even lower,
mm.
because it's supposed to be
Yeah.
better. It's more trained on tool calling and code editing and all the things that you need for the Codex experience. And if you switch to the regular GPT, it might be better at writing or better at general task um, accomplishment, but for coding specifically, it's not necessarily going to be. And that might
Mm,
actually translate into, maybe I'll try that as another experiment too, is go to the regular GPT model instead of the Codex
mm.
one and see if I get any difference in outcome that way.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting. Maybe, but like then you wouldn't get the tool calling and like you need to do like you're
yeah,
doing
I mean,
tool
it can
calling
do
and
it.
programming.
It can
Okay.
do the tool calling and code editing pieces. It's just not trained for that, or
Yeah.
whatever they're doing internally to slice up these things. I don't really know, but that's the way that they market it. It is available there. I have used it a couple of times, just for, I have a huge amount of documentation that needs to be reviewed and updated because I've got some big changes or something. And so then it kind of goes and scours
Mm.
all of those and rewrites what needs to be rewritten. And that all worked fairly well. But I've just been using the Dash Codex models for all of the actual coding work. And maybe that's where I went wrong.
Maybe. Well, on a somewhat unrelated note, and this is a curveball because I didn't ask you about this beforehand. Have you tried using Claude Agent Teams? From what I understand, Agent Teams is um, basically using Claude in multiple sessions across Git work trees, but it manages it for you. Is that roughly correct?
It's I don't think there's a work tree component
Okay.
to them. There's a central Claude, and then instead of the normal task tool that it would use to fire off a sub agent, it's I think they renamed it actually. I don't know what the tool call is, but they where it creates separate full Claude code instances that are
Okay.
like physically separate processes. If you're inside of a TMUX session, it can actually split out new panes for all
Oh,
of the new
cool.
Claudes that it's
But
opening because they are
automatically?
full, yeah, automatically. And then it has tools then for all of those Claudes and the main one to talk to each other internally, so they don't go in as
Oh,
user messages. They're
that's
tool
cool.
call responses or something like that. And I've only used it a couple of times. Didn't quite do what I was after. I
Mm.
mean, it works, but the idea is Claude you can tell it like, oh, this seems like there's a lot of different parts to this. And I did have, here's one big change that has three very distinct layers to it. Of
Mm.
There's some like back end engine work, and there's some service layer work, and then some front end work that wires it all together. And that, I said, try your new Teams tooling to tackle all of this. And it said, oh, yes, looking at the list, I see three distinct layers here. I think if a team of three Claudes could do this really well. And so then it fired those up. And yeah, they all kind of just work through the problem together. And the one that's doing front end stuff would kind of wait for some API changes to be ready. And then it could go integrate those or test them properly. And they kind of all brainstorm on what the solution space would look like. And it seemed really cool. I don't know that the results were any better than if I just had the main normal Claude using normal subagents to work through the same, though. It did go faster,
Okay.
I think, because all of them were reading files at the same time, and
Mm.
the concurrency aspect was a bit better. But there was a lot more coordination overhead, and that one single session used, I think, like 8% of my weekly token
Oh,
budget.
wow.
It
Yeah, that
was
makes
very
sense.
expensive. And so I didn't really do that again because I haven't had a need.
That
I'm
makes
okay with
sense.
waiting a bit longer for my results if I can do, three times as much stuff. So that was the big killer bit, is just all of the like talking to each other has a lot of
Mm.
token overhead, and I don't know how beneficial that actually is. Um,
I had a lot of trouble in the past with using the Git work tree approach. Um, just the trouble was with programming specifically was that it was often hard to split up the tasks I was working on into things that could be done completely parallel in a way that I was confident would not necessarily impact each other. Sure, you can deal with Git like merge issues later on if you need to. I would rather not. I would rather just like have it all kind of like done in that's why I'd like to do it serially versus in parallel. So I imagine that, at least in my experience, that was tricky. I know there's some people that do, but it's like maybe you need a sufficiently wide enough code base. Maybe you need a monorepo where you have different separate repos within them. That could work. But for like a traditional software that's kind of dedicated to at least a single set of things, I find it too hard to guarantee that the LLM is not going to just like step on its own toes across the different work sets. So I'd imagine that if given that constraint or given that experience I've had, Agent Teams is almost like dedicated to more normie tasks. I don't know, like people that aren't working on engineering things, like people that are doing research and blog posts and marketing or emails or like all the other things you could kind of basically think of it as an assistant on your computer that can do anything on your computer for you. Tasks other than like single dedicated work tasks where you do have many things going at once that don't cross over. There's lots of things to do that. So I imagine that would be the best use case for them, and that might be why they built it. Unless there's a very obvious way or there's a way to use it for programming type work that I just haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I think there's probably some good potential there for non-coding tasks that you can have it kind of fan out a team to go do a bunch of stuff concurrently and then aggregate the results, or they can talk to each other to figure out how to. I just don't do much of that personally. I do know like all of this is available in the Claude desktop app at this point as well. So they've got the Coda, they've got the co-work is
yes.
if there's 3 tabs now in the desktop one. There's the main Claude normal chat interface, and then there's a co-work one where it's basically running, I think, Claude code in a VM. So it gives it a bit of sandboxing, but then you can give it direct file system access or whatever for the specific things you want it to do. And then there's the actual Claude Code one, which is just running Claude Code with a different UI on it. And I know that some folks are really enjoying the co-work experience, and I imagine, the Teams stuff would probably go really well depending on what you're actually working on there. You can have it doing all kinds of stuff, but again, very expensive. Couldn't believe how expensive it was. That one session, so it did solve.
So it worked.
The team output was great. It did it fast. I was very surprised at how fast it was. It took about 20 minutes. I thought it would normally that set of work should have taken probably an hour and a half for one Claude to kind of work through. So it was radically faster. But again, 8% of my weekly limits on the 20x max plan is like I can't imagine people on Pro are ever doing that, because there goes their entire week in one shot.
That's true. Well, it reminds me of, remember when Claude, I think it was like around Christmas-ish last year, they gave out the credits for everyone to use Claude Web. And you did this thing where I then did it after, where you basically you're like, I'm just going to use all these credits. I'm going to use as much as I can. You basically spun up web repos for research of ideas. Like ideas that you had that you're like, you just want to look into. You just spun up like a loop or a Claude Web instance where it said like, use all the background, all the sub-agents you can, basically. And you just had it fan out to as many as it possibly could for research work. So I figure for that kind of work, that's probably also like a really good use case for this. Like I think about that's kind of how I use deep research now. In particular, I use it on OpenAI, on ChatGPT. But you could do, and that's what I did as well. I used it basically as a deep research with sub-agents when we had those credits. So you could probably do the same thing, but again, it just gets expensive. It was probably effective at those tasks, but just expensive at doing those tasks.
Yeah. And I'm not opposed to it. Conceptually, I think it works. The results I got were very solid. I think that it's a good tool to have. I just don't have budget for that kind of thing to use regularly. If you have, a hole burning in your wallet and you want to throw $1,000 at something, I'm sure the results will be great.
Some people do.
And, that's something I'm finding through this whole thing of learning how to use these tools effectively, is just throw more tokens at the problem and having this team of agents that are talking amongst themselves, throws more tokens at the problem, and the results are really good. I totally understand why that scales up the way that it does, and that sounds great to me. But it, gets expensive if you've got a big company with big budgets that you're okay with throwing at AI stuff. Great, I'm sure that'll work out really well for you.
For sure.
Yeah.
Did you? I don't know if I want to bring up this article without having read the whole thing. The Klein thing with OpenClaw.
Oh.
Did you read that article?
Yes, I read headlines.
Yeah, that was me too. So I feel like it would be. I don't want to bring it up and talk about it unless I read the full thing. I'm just gonna skip over that for now. I don't feel like it's fair to Klein. I always have a soft spot in my heart for Klein. I like them.
I mean, Klein was my first intro to kind of the agent tooling space. That was the one that really first had something like a solid product built around this concept of just let it go run tool calls.
It was magical
until the work is done. And that was such an incredible thing when I first started getting into that, because I before that we had better tab completion. I was really excited about Super Maven. I don't know if you ever used that one. It was kind of a alternative to the Copilot tab completion stuff that was in VS Code, but it had extensions for other editors and stuff, but just the model behind it was better and faster, significantly faster. And so it could do, at the time, amazing stuff of just writing, an entire function for you on tab complete that was based off of the doc string that you wrote at the top. And that was wild and amazing. And I couldn't believe that computers could do this all of a sudden. And then Klein comes and you could just let it write whole programs all by itself here now. And this is doing crazy stuff. But I think the only reason I really stopped actually using Klein was because Claude Code came and you get these subscriptions with so many tokens.
Yes, same. 100%.
Klein, you're paying API rates that are just,
Well, they eventually added a feature to use your Claude. You eventually added the feature to use your Claude subscription, which now Claude is cracking down on everywhere. So you can't really do that anymore, unfortunately. But yes, I agree. I was the exact same.
Yeah. I mean, that's unfortunate moves as well. I think OpenAI went and kind of swooped in and took, Anthropic had a big open code users cannot use this anymore. And then a few days later, OpenAI says, but you can use an OpenAI subscription with this. No problem at all. That's not, and doing that. And then they're jumping on a bunch of stuff with that. Like they hired the ClaudeBot guy.
They did.
Was
it ClaudeBot or OpenClaw?
Well, it's now OpenClaw. It was ClaudeBot.
Was it the same? It was the same project, and he renamed it. I see.
He had to rename it twice. I think the second time, I don't know the motivation there, but the first was because he got a cease and desist from Anthropic around the name. And then he started pushing Codex really heavily, and now he works at OpenAI, and OpenClaw has its own foundation or something. There's a whole big thing there.
OpenClaw. I don't get OpenClaw. I take that back. I get it. I understand it. The same reason why on my spare laptop I run YOLO mode, like when I'm running rough loops, I just let it run because it's just convenient, right? But and nobody's posting. I haven't seen enough people post like, oh my goodness, I have OpenClaw and it used up all my AWS credits for the month, or oh my goodness, it sent out emails to all my friends saying I no longer want to be friends because I want to work on this paperclip problem, or oh my god, it had access to my bank account. There's so many things. You're basically giving access to this unknown entity to everything on your computer to just do what it wants. What?
Depends how you set it up. There's a lot of people who are provisioning it with full separate identities and stuff. You sign it up for a different Gmail account, and
which makes sense.
Whatever, and then it's kind of over there. And then if you want it to, you want it to read an email for you, you forward it that email instead of just giving it your whole inbox and that kind of stuff.
That's smart. I mean, it all starts with as long as you're sandboxing it properly, as long as you're whatever, you just have to keep in mind whatever you give it access to, it has access to and can do anything with. Restricting that is the key. I think not enough people knew that before, or which seems kind of weird. It's the
definition of like a remote code exploit,
It's
right?
lazy. Honestly, man, it's
Um,
lazy. It's like the desire to laziness has given us so many wonderful things in life, but it has also caused so many disasters. And it's like I think many software engineers, especially like engineering types, like we're lazy to a certain degree. Like we once we know we can automate something, we're like, well, why not automate it? And then we automate it, and it's like, oh, our life's easier, and then we go find something else to automate. But like, I think a lot of the reason for doing like leaning into OpenClaw without restrictions is just takes too long. It's too much effort to go and set up a separate identity for everything you want to use. Like it's the same reason why
yeah,
people use the same password for everything,
yeah,
right?
it's exactly that kind of a thing. Or there's a what could really go wrong. People don't really realize the risks necessarily.
Yes.
Um, like I am totally fine to let Claude go YOLO mode on my
Right.
local machine. Um, it, something could go terribly wrong probably there. Hasn't
Yeah.
so far. And I've gotten used to enough of like how the models work and stuff that I know that it's not going to just go start randomly going off track to go dig into my
Right.
Chrome, whatever the session database is
Mm-hmm.
there on my file system. It's still going to still work on the things that I've asked it to work on because those things are not related.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know other models would do that though necessarily,
Yeah.
which is weird. But yeah, definitely don't give it full global access or permission even.
Yeah.
Because if you open a Claude Code session or a Codex session and you say, yeah, go please review everything that has ever happened in my browsing history, it will go dig through the
Yeah.
files and go track down how to do that, and it will do it. It's not going to go off script and do that impromptu
Mm-hmm.
on its own. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
I get it. It's like you have at least like a more well that comes down to like confidence in the models and the ability like and the way that they're trained and what they actually focus on. Um, I want if I may really quickly I want to have a bit of a philosophical moment where I realized I don't know over the past couple weeks it's just been slowly more and more hitting me or dawning on me or just like on my mind that we thinking back to like before we wrote code with AI. I will start by prefacing this by saying like I love how fast we can build things now. I think that's amazing. I also like miss the act of writing code and of like actually solving a problem and like the intellectual challenge of figuring something out, reading through docs, and like when it works, it's like, oh my goodness. Like I remember when I created, so I can go back and look at the proxy security solution I built. Like I founded a startup, built security software for doing basically security testing at huge scale. It was proxy based, and I remember when I first like got it working and like it was running and I was proxying my traffic from my local computer through it and like seeing it all go through was like magic and it felt so good. It kept me so motivated all the time to just see the steady progress. And looking back, I am still very proud of what I built. Um, but it almost now, if I go and tell people like what I built, I have to say like I did this all before there was LLMs to help because otherwise it kind of cheapens what we
right.
built to make it think like, oh well, I could build that in a weekend. I could just use a Ralph loop and build it in a week, which you kind of probably could. It obviously wouldn't be the same thing, but like you could do it so much faster now, and so it cheapens everything that we built kind of before LLMs, the before times of that, when it actually took real effort and like these software, like you kind of appreciated um, how much could have gone into some software as simple as like a notepad, your notepad document, or like notepad plus plus even, or like VLC, like all this stuff. People think, oh, now I can go and build it in a weekend, and in many cases you can. But I just, I'm a little sad at how it cheapens the work of what used to be something that was much more momentous in the things you built, and that feeling of satisfaction you got from building something so great. It kind of cheapens that. So just a moment of I guess sadness and thinking about that's kind of come over me lately. I've felt that.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I think the sentiment I'm seeing quite a bit of is like a division starting between industrial mass-produced factory
Mm,
software, which is where we're kind of into now as a thing, versus the handcrafted
mm,
artisanal software of the days of yore.
yeah.
And that's still something, you know, that you can do, and
Yeah.
you can still have that whole intellectual pursuit and reward
True.
function off of that stuff, just the same way that there's a lot of old trades and crafts that there are still people doing them. It's just
Mm-hmm.
not as many, and it's not as common because it's not required anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You used to have, everybody had, somebody that was making clothes or whatever, whether that was a family member or
Mm-hmm.
you go, to an actual tailor or something, and now all the clothing is mass produced
Mm-hmm.
somewhere else. And tailors still exist, but they're doing kind of different things. Cobblers still exist if you want to get your shoes fixed up,
Yeah.
but usually is you just buy a new pair of shoes. And
Mm-hmm.
the same kind of thing I think is going for software, where you can go write it by hand. All the tools still exist, and they're
Mm-hmm.
still awesome tools. And it's just a question of, is that actually where you want to spend your time? And if it's a hobby thing
Mm-hmm.
or otherwise, like, you can. It's just, I
Yeah.
don't know. I'm finding my own, the intellectual satisfaction of solving problems is just kind of at a higher level now.
I
Like I
see.
can,
Yeah.
I, which is also a different kind of issue, actually, because I spend my whole day thinking then through the harder problems and the
Mm.
design space and the architecture
True.
decisions and how do you do this correctly. And all of that takes quite a bit of deep thought. Whereas before, I could do a bunch of deep thinking, and then I would sit down and I would start typing for hours on end, and I would build out a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm kind
Mm-hmm.
of a little bit in autopilot mode of
Mm.
just being able to lock in and type stuff, and you get some of that editor feedback that says, "Oh, you made these errors. You need to go, do whatever." The tools are kind of the older tools with you're running your tests and you're doing your things, and that doesn't take a whole lot of really critical deep thinking unless you're in some really edge case weird bug or something like that the program's not doing what you think it should. But for the most
Mm-hmm.
part, it's a lot of mechanical work of just working through the thing that you have already designed, and that activates a different part of your brain that gives the critical thinking, deep thinking part a bit of a break.
Mm.
Whereas now it's all day long is the
Mm.
you know,
The deep
hard
thinking.
thinking part of the job, because the mechanical work of just putting the code into the computer is completely taken care of. And so then I have to take intentional breaks then of, I'm not going to think about these tasks that I'm supposed to be doing right now. I'm going
Yeah.
to go just do some other filler work or unload the dishwasher or something,
Yeah.
because otherwise, I had weeks of, I'm going really, really hard because I can do so much stuff now and I'm going,
Yeah.
going, going. And
Yeah.
then just, I'm exhausted. I cannot
That's
do
it.
anything else. And
Yeah, I feel like it
just
also
completely
leads more
different
to
times.
burnout
Yeah.
now, right? Like it leads more to because you're kind of expected to you can operate at this pace now. And so I think just so many people will just push that and keep operating at that pace because it does feel good. It feels really good to think deeply and to like solve problems really quickly and to build things. So it's easier to kind of keep running at that pace for much longer, but then you just burn yourself out quicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I think, definitely different or weirder in that we haven't really had that as a possibility for how you spend your time
Yeah.
before. There was always, every job that you're doing, some amount of rote mechanical work that you have to spend some
Right.
amount of your day doing. And now a bunch of that is completely gone off of your plate. And so you can put more time in, and you don't necessarily realize, because your brain, it's not like if you were out running for an hour, right? And you're physically getting tired, or you're working outside doing yard work or something, you physically get tired, you go, oh, I need a break. I'm going to go
Mm,
sit for a bit. Or I'm going to go have lunch. Your brain, I don't think, has the same, there's not nerve endings in there to say, oh, I'm feeling fatigued right now. And
right.
so you can kind of just keep pushing through it, even though you're really going past where your brain's capacity is at.
Mm,
Or at least that's a problem I think I run into. Maybe other
yeah.
people are better at, is some internal tracking there that
Yeah.
they can feel like mentally fatigued better, but I don't really feel the fatigue until hours later or the next day or something,
Yeah.
where like I'm just in a kind of a fog, and
Yeah.
I pushed myself too hard. Totally didn't realize it at the time, because you're getting these feedback loops of dopamine as things are, all the building blocks are coming together and doing all
Mm,
that stuff. And yeah, it takes a lot to, I think, to recalibrate to say, okay, I cannot actually do this all day, every day, because I'm gonna burn out or something's gonna break and it's not good. I think there's a lot of people who, especially since Opus 4.5
Yeah.
end of last year came out, that realized, oh, these things can do a lot, and they started really diving into it. And then a lot of people are losing sleep and just going ham on whatever it is that they're working on because they can, and they
Yeah.
haven't hit those yet.
But they don't have other things in their
Yeah,
life that are pressing on them.
yeah, and there's a whole new set of things to juggle or balance
Yeah.
properly now. I think it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, I don't want to go too much over time. That's kind of I don't know if that's a sad place to end it or I don't know, like a good lesson to end it on is like, no, like these things are exciting, keep going, but pace yourself, I guess. Is that the takeaway?
pace yourself. Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I did see a thing actually just on that same note before we go here. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, about how historically, even the super productive people of history always had shorter actual working days.
Really?
None of them sat down for 8 to 10 hours a day to crank through their problems. They
Mm,
would have they would work on whatever it is that they're doing for a couple hours in the morning, and then maybe a couple hours in the afternoon or in the evening or something, but it would really only be 4 to 5 hours a day, kind of tops. And they have journals where you could actually see what they worked
hmm.
on and how they, some of them were very fastidious around keeping logs and notes and things as they did, and so you can actually see all of that. And yeah, they would start working at 10 in the morning, and they'd go to like 11:30 or noon or something, and then take a break for a few hours and pick up again at 3 o'clock and do a couple more hours, and then they and they just kind of were self naturally pacing.
Mm.
Whereas we got into this whole 9 to 5 industrial workday thing, and
And that's become
that's
the
the
standard.
expectation then, is that you're working all of that time
Mm.
every day. And maybe that's like the thing that we have to shake ourselves back out of, is it's okay to take several hours out of your day at various, like, take breaks regularly,
Mm.
go work really intensely for a couple of hours, and then give your brain a break, and then go work intensely again, and then and if that only is 3 to 4 hours of your day, then that should be fine. I think that's the whole point of automation. At
Mm.
least it used to be, right? You could free up people to be able to do other things, and we have this huge amount of automation in the software world now that we can, we should start taking some advantage of it. And but we also, I think, have to, because you
Mm.
cannot just lock in for 10 hours every single day.
Yeah.
Just physically, we can't do it as humans. It's kind of weird that way, but I think maybe that's part of why some, like, we're not getting huge 10x productivity increases, is because there's still like natural human in the loop
Mm.
bottlenecks here. We can only really focus on so much stuff during our day, and there's
Yeah.
only so many balls we can keep in the air, and that is still a limiting bit until we automate the next level of things that we're still doing.
Mm.
I think there's a lot we can keep offloading to these as we realize how to properly encode what is our workflow, what is our thought process around problem X, how do you actually go solve that in a proper way. You can write all of that down. The AIs are pretty good at following that.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of keep moving up the abstraction ladder at that point. And I don't know where that goes.
And then they're
I
in our
do
brain.
definitely have,
Then they're attached to our brain.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's stuff around that too. Like there was a model release this week actually that's for EEG processing. So you, like, where
Really.
they can, like, it's trained on proper EEG signals, and it can map over or extrapolate from partial readings off of shittier consumer hardware. So, because right now the main thing is, if there's a gap with one of the electrodes is not touching properly or something, it would kind of try to just smooth over the curve there using
Okay.
some fancy math. Whereas now there's an actual model that knows, based on all of this brainwave data that it's seen before, what these signals likely were. And so it's not a smoothing function. It'll actually interpolate
Hmm.
complex um,
Wow.
complex signals in there. And apparently the results are it's really good. And so you can stick that in the middle. You put your little actual thinking hat on, and just think through stuff and have that feed into a machine. That's not an unrealistic future at this point,
Oh my
which
God.
is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. That makes sense. Wow. Well, should we end on that mind blowing statement and
Yeah,
fact? That's crazy.
yeah. Let's let's do that. Yeah, yeah. All right, yeah. I don't know. I have these like mini existential crises quite regularly around like all of this stuff and what this can do and what do we do when this can do these things.
Yeah.
Then I don't know.
No
We'll
answers
figure
yet?
that out over time because we have to. But sorry, what did you say?
I said no answers yet.
No answers. I think it's going to be a while before we, as a species, adapt to these things. Like
Yeah.
most people don't know that any of this exists. By the way, like
Yes,
that's
I
an
know.
important thing to call out. Most people have no concept of the things that computers can now do.
Hmm.
Um, and we're still in a bubble. The phrase is we're still early
Yeah.
on all of this. Like it's we're kind of tapped into it, and so we can see these
Hmm.
things kind of coming out in real time here.
Yeah.
Every model release, we go, oh wow, this can do this now. That's phenomenal. And then we start playing with how to make it do more stuff. But most people have no
It's true.
concept of that. They're not looking at these things at all. It's not on their radar. Most people do know that ChatGPT exists. They do have 900
Hmm.
million users or something like that. So like people kind of get that there are these chatbots, but that's about
Yeah.
it. It's still kind of it's a resource. People use it in place of Google now, but they're not pushing on it, and they don't really know where this all, what it can do today.
I had a
It's a lot.
I had a friend of mine who he's progressively gone down this rabbit hole of like what AI can do, and he's a realtor, so he's not in a technical field in any sense. But he sent me this he sent me this article. It was there was the article saying basically that like most people don't realize this is happening right now, but this is kind of where it's leading, and he's on this almost like this doom spiral. I had to talk him off the ledge of like selling all this stuff and getting a house up north so that he didn't have a mortgage and he didn't have to worry about like paying off things because the dollar's eventually going to crash because nobody's going to have a job, no one's going to be spending money, and like that's the. But I mean, if you, it is extreme, but if you play out the AI can do everything world, it leads to AI doing everything and humans. I don't know, like, yes, there's so many jobs that have been taken over because after automation came in place with like the industrial revolution and the printing press and all these things, other jobs came about. They probably didn't know then what they were going to be. I don't know what they are now. So it's like there's this like curtain of like what happens when AI starts taking over and then people start losing their jobs. Like what other jobs come about? I don't know what happens. And the pessimistic view is that the cynical view is that like we will not have jobs. AI will take over, and then people won't spend money, and then dollars will crash, and the world will basically collapse. That's why there's all these bringing billionaires buying bunkers in New Zealand because in anticipation of this apocalyptic ending. Which the apocalypse doesn't have to be violent; it could just be a slow whimper of like people losing their livelihoods. And so I had to like talk them off the ledge and be like, well, I don't think that's going to happen in the next at least year or two. And I mean, like even that is pretty surprising to say, but like I don't think that's going to happen in the next year or two. However, I do acknowledge the rate of change is astronomical. It's absurd. And I do see that that is a potential the way that it can be played out. So I don't.
Yep.
I think some people are starting to realize this and to see it, and I just don't know what happens in the world after AI can kind of do everything. Even now, it can do so many people's jobs.
It can do a lot. It's yeah, nobody has an answer. We're gonna see. It's
Mm-hmm.
coming. We're gonna find out how it's gonna play out. I can't predict anything worth anything at this point, even just regarding my own day-to-day work. Like I
Yeah.
think, oh, this is going to be straightforward, and then it still takes 5 days because there's some weirdness to it, but then other
Mm-hmm.
stuff that should take 5 days is done in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot estimate anything, and I cannot even then how do you extrapolate beyond that? I don't know. But just to call back to the earlier thing around, if you have the budget to throw a team of agents at something and you get solid results out of it, the people with the budgets are going to be doing that, and they're going to have, that's where like, if you have capital, you can throw it at these tools to then acquire more capital. And there's going to be, like, there's been a decades long funneling upward of just the capital in our society kind of concentrating places. And I think that's going to accelerate through the roof, because if you have it, if you have $1 billion, you can buy a lot of AI stuff. If you have $100 billion, you can buy literally anything you want, I think, at this point. You just have to figure out how to deploy that properly. And you can just, you're not limited by the $200 max plan or something. You can just run these things hard 24/7 and get ridiculous results out of it. And I think that as people realize how to deploy these things more effectively and how to get them, adapted to different types of tasks, they're just going to do that more. And you get this like feedback loop flywheel thing happening where it's not going to stop. And then I don't know anything. So again, mini existential crises pretty regularly, because what are we all doing? I don't know. What am I going to do? I don't know. It's
you're just along for the ride, holding on tight, and just. Do you have more of an optimistic view or pessimistic view? Like, where do you lean?
I mean, I'm really in a like purely neutral. I do not know at this point. I can see it going. There is possibly very negative outcomes here, but also possibly very positive ones, and it really depends on a whole lot of factors. There's a non-zero chance of capital redistributions based on just, you cannot have 7 billion homeless people on the planet. Like, things have to change. Change takes a very long time though, and I think the technology is adapting or evolving way faster than people are able to adapt around it. So I'm sure it'll be difficult in a bunch of ways, but every other big history transition, we get through it. Humanity adapts and evolves to whatever the new circumstances are, and it becomes a new normal. It's just really weird during the transition parts. So, don't know.
So we've survived thus far. We'll continue to survive as a species.
Well, I mean, the species is not going anywhere, but possibly, we get a lot smaller or something. If the majority of things that actually need to be done can be done by machines, maybe in a couple of centuries, there's actually only 20 million people on the planet or something, because also birth rates are falling through the floor across the globe and all these other bits. And, that could be a thing. But then possibly, in 300 years at that population, you get some weird utopia come out of it, because it's, everybody's needs are already solved for, because food production is fully automated and all the other things.
Utopia never lasts.
People. So there'll be conflicts and there'll be nonsense things, but that's for future people to navigate.
So I guess in summary, it's like, it's probably not as great as it seems. It's probably not as bad as it seems.
Yes, both are true. I think there's a big wait and see component to all of this, and definitely don't sell everything you own and go move up north.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, or unless you've been dreaming of doing that anyway, maybe that's fine.
Then that's a lifestyle that you want, then go for it. This doesn't need to be the excuse for it. I know, I get it. Well, I need to I'm going to spend some time this coming week and make use of my Claude subscription a little bit more, because 4.6 is pretty good. I'm going to go back to building my probably my storyteller system again, and then I think I mentioned to you earlier, I'll probably start using it more at work for work stuff if I can figure out the right things to build. But the tools are very capable. They're only getting better. I don't know. I'm trying to end on some sort of like positive note, because that was like It's
Yeah. I
pretty
mean,
heavy.
that's the bit right now. It's still fun. Like, there's still a lot of things we can build. I would say, even if you can't think of anything that seems like a worthwhile thing to go build, just fire it off anyway.
True.
There's a whole big. I do still have this Git repository that's connected to the Claude Web thing
Yeah.
for random. It's just a repository called Research on GitHub
Yeah.
that I just open up, and it pops open a branch, and I say I'm curious about X. And the nice thing with it being Claude Code is it has a full coding environment. It can go build prototypes and do stuff,
Right.
whereas the deep research things in the chat interfaces,
True.
they can go research lots of stuff and they'll give you a nice report about it, but the Codex Web or Claude Code Web can actually go build stuff and
Right.
test out if the ideas are sound. And you can do that with so many things. If you really wanted to get into, whatever your hobby interest might be, if you're really into airplanes or something, you could have it spin up like fluid dynamic simulations to understand different wing, like aerofoil shapes, and like just go nuts with it. You can build anything at this
Doesn't
point.
have to be a
And
big.
you
Doesn't
just,
have to be a huge thing.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. You could just be really curious about, like, oh, would X work? Go build me a prototype to see if that's something that's, useful or feasible or anything like that. And it'll go run for a couple of hours and come back and say, no, sorry, that doesn't actually. It's really, really hard to go do that. Or it'll say, here's the thing I built. It's amazing. We should, ship this and launch a startup and do all the things.
Yeah.
You still get those sycophantic loops going. But
well, when you say it'll run
so,
for a couple hours, do you mean like naturally, or do you like? Because my first tendency, if I'm gonna have it build something, is I want to just set it up like with the blog post I wrote. I have a script that basically sets up a Ralph instance, and then just like I define a PRD essentially with it, and then it goes and like runs through that. Is that what you first reach for, or do you kind of do more of it? Because my issue is like I can't watch it all the time. I just don't have enough time in my life right now to just be constantly watching it, and so I want to be able to just be like, this idea, put it down, run with it, and see come back a couple hours later and see what it built. And the only way I can think of doing that is essentially through the Ralph loop. Is that what you do, or is that
well, you can't do that on the web ones, unfortunately.
Right, yes.
But I have done that for quite a bit of other stuff where I know that the prototyping or the work involved would be a bit more. Is I'll do a bit of a brain dump and have it make up a bunch of tickets and then Ralph loop through all of them and go build it all. But on the web ones, though, it does still have a full Claude Code environment happening. So you can actually add stop hooks and stuff to it where you can have it's trying to stop, but you can reject the stop and say that, oh, you're not actually done yet, keep going, and it will keep going then.
That's a good idea.
So it's not quite the same thing. That's basically Anthropic does have an official Ralph plugin, by the way. That's a
have you tried it in a while?
I haven't. No, it's not Ralph at that point, but it does kind of work, right? It does keep the thing going until the job is done, but you do still run into the problems of the session will compact at some point, and it'll kind of go off track because of that, and it's not going to keep to the rules, and it's just not Ralph. Ralph is all about the fresh context window continuously as it's going, whereas this is just keep growing the context window infinitely until the job is done and compact it as needed. So it's just the results are not as good. A bunch of people have tested actually between the two, like assigned the same task to both variants of external batch loop versus internal stop hook rejection thing, and the external batch loop always gives a better final output, but it does work. If you just have a stop hook that just continuously rejects being able to stop, so the act just cannot stop. It works. You can do that and get a lot of stuff done. And if you're just doing throwaway prototype stuff, that's more than adequate.
If it's just a small scope.
Yeah.
There's an art and science to determining the right. This is something I learned doing startups. Is like your MVP, your prototype, like it's smaller than you think it needs to be. You just got to figure out what is the core thing I need to prove and like try, and then you can build it over time. Like you should be shipping early, shipping often, but getting to the core of like what is the main thing that I'm trying to do without all the bells and whistles as early as possible. So that's the kind of the art of it, is like figuring out what that one thing is to be most effective at whatever prototype you're trying to build.
Yes. There's a huge amount of that, and that's again like that's where we're at now. You don't have to sit down and mechanically type in the code as you're thinking about like what is the right thing to build and what
Yeah.
is the layer I want to
Right.
work on and all of that.
Right. That's the thing you could be thinking about. That's the thing we can. It's AI in the current iteration is frees us up to think about more in programming. Is like, what is the more nuanced meta analysis of the project you're working on, rather than the like individual rote repetitive like writing code, the implementation part.
Yes, exactly. Which I don't know. I think right now it's still a good space. Like, yeah, there's a doomer future outlook possibility here, but
Sure.
right now, this is fun. You can build a lot
Yeah.
of stuff. You can explore a lot of ideas. I'm learning a ridiculous amount of stuff about
Mm.
just things in general because I can fire off these random research things and
Yeah.
then go see how it pans out. And oh, is that a good idea or not? Okay, let's go in this other direction. And just constant. For folks who like to learn things, I think these are phenomenal tools because you can
100%.
just lean into them so far and get. It's not even necessarily about like what is being built. It's about the knowledge that you get from working
Mm.
through the problem space,
Right.
and you don't have to have your hands on the keyboard to do that. And
Mm.
because it's so much faster, like I used to spend a ton of hobby time when I was younger just building little prototypes of things, and it would take me weeks, right, of
Yeah.
like nights and weekends hacking away on something
Hmm.
and then going, oh no, this actually really doesn't work the way I thought it did.
Yeah.
I can't really go anywhere with this, or maybe it does work out, or maybe whatever, or you lose interest. But now all of the nights and weekends get compressed
That's
into
true.
one evening of go build out the thing, see if my idea actually makes any kind of sense at all,
Yeah.
and you find out right away if you're on track or not, and you didn't spend all of that time building
Mm.
something that went nowhere. And I think that that's hugely powerful because then you can just loop through so many different ideas. Everything that you can think of, you can just
Mm.
try now. There's no real limits on that, and just it's and then that's just fun at that point.
That's
So
true.
like in the moment, these tools are great. In the distant future, I have no
Who
idea.
knows?
So I'm going to do a little bit of a hedonism thing here and say that this is right now, things are good. We may all lose our jobs in the next 5 years. We may all just evolve into different jobs that
Yeah.
are overseeing all of the, you know, robot slaves that we have or whatever is going
Yeah. The
on.
the agentic workers, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. So that's where I'm at the moment, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I'd be curious. Maybe next week we should talk about your long list of projects because I have we all have projects I think on the project list. I've always been fascinated by the projects you've picked up. So I think we should talk about that next week.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah, maybe it'll give me some ideas.
Oh, yeah. Well, ideas are, I don't know, there's no limits on ideas all of a sudden. And that's just weird
That's
too,
true.
because then, like you're saying, like you have to pick and choose what you want to work on and what
Yeah.
that is, right? And you can iterate faster now. You get a faster understanding of if that's something worth pursuing or not, but there's still limits on your time
Hmm.
of knowing you've got 300 ideas. You can still, even with, before you could pick one, and that was what you're going to do for the next 6 months is that one idea. And now you can, over 6 months, probably work through all 300 of them,
Yeah.
but those ones will unlock new ideas, and there's
Mm.
just ideas are endless. There's the whole thing in startup land too, is ideas
Yeah.
aren't really worth anything.
Yeah.
It's
Ideas are cheap.
execution, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody's got ideas,
Yeah.
everybody has ideas, and but now you can try your ideas instantly, and it's amazing.
Yeah. It is
Do
pretty
love that
amazing. It is pretty
part.
amazing. You know what? I'm gonna go brush off my idea like project list and start spinning some stuff up because I think there's a certain element because I have since I got back from my trip I haven't spun up Claude at all, and I think there's just a certain element of um, atrophy or like just momentum that you have to build just like practice of like flexing the muscle of just like thinking of an idea and going and building that thing that I
Yeah,
just got to get back into. So I'm gonna open up that project list and start building some stuff.
yeah, that sounds great. Let me know how that goes.
I will. I will. We'll talk about it next week.
Cool, sounds good. All right, I will see you then. Have a good weekend.
Sounds good. Thanks. You too, Greg. Bye.
Cheers.